Okay, today's lesson is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be about another English colony, but this English colony is unlike Roanoke, the Lost Island. Remember that? The Lost Colony of Roanoke? Or Jamestown. Remember, those people came because they wanted to get rich. The people that come next, though, are not coming to get rich. They're coming because they're seeking religious freedom. Seeking religious freedom, all right? I want you to really pay attention to the differences and similarities between the people that we're going to talk about today and the people at Jamestown. Okay, here we go. Okay, remember a couple lessons back I talked about the Protestant Reformation, and many countries were beginning to side either with the traditional Catholic Church or this new religious movement called the Protestant Reformation. All right, well, here's the difference back then than it is today. You were really controlled not only by the king in your day-to-day life, the taxes you paid, the rules that you had to live by, but also your religious beliefs. Remember, a lot of these kings felt that they were there because it was God's will. God has made me king. They believed that, and many of the people that lived under the king believed that. Therefore, if God wanted me to be king, and therefore, when I say that we need to be Catholic, well, guess what? That's what we'll all do, because if you disobey the king, then who are you really disobeying? Really, you're disobeying God, at least according to them, right? Because everybody believed that God put that king on the throne. So therefore, you start to see these countries really develop these strong religious ideas, but there is very little room for religious freedom, for your personal religious beliefs. No, you had to be the same religion as the king or the government, or you were going to be persecuted. All right? So how did they do this? Well, they set up established churches, which means that's the religion supported by the state. If you live in that country, you had to be that religion. Therefore, if you're in France, let's say, you need to be Catholic. Even though the Protestants and the Catholics are going to fight in France for about 40 years. All right. If you're in Italy, well, you have to be Catholic. If you're in Spain, you have to be Catholic. If you're not, then you are going to be persecuted. And what is a persecution? Persecution is the mistreatment or punishment of people for their beliefs. So, therefore, if you are in Italy and you said, hey man, I am not going to go to Mass, I'm not Catholic, I am going to practice this other religion, whoa, be careful. You're probably going to be, at the very least, ostracized. Nobody will speak to you. Nobody will come to your shop or buy anything from your store, and you may not even be able to buy anything from other people. Worst case scenario, you'd probably be prison or even killed. All right? So I want you guys to understand, though, unlike today, back then, you had to practice the religion of the king, or you're going to be in big trouble. Okay, so now let's talk about England. All right. King Henry VIII has broken away from the Catholic Church. A couple reasons for that. Mostly because the Catholic Church wouldn't give him a divorce, right? I want a divorce. Nope, you can't have one. I'm the king. How dare you tell me I can't have a divorce? Well, you can't have one. He goes, well, fine. Then I break with the Catholic Church, and I'm going to establish my own church, the Church of England, with the king at the head. Remember, the Catholic Church, if you know anything about the Catholic Church, the Pope in Rome is the head of the Catholic Church. Well, now King Henry VIII of England says, nope, our new church is the Church of England, and I am the head of the church. I will tell you what to believe. By the way, the Church of England is also called the Anglican Church, Anglicans. All right, so if you hear Anglican or the Church of England, it's the same. So don't get confused on that. Okay, so, however, I got to tell you a little something about Henry VIII. Henry VIII really kind of liked the Catholics. In fact, he at one time was a defender of the faith. He had wrote a lot of important papers defending the Catholic Church, right? So when they breaks away from the Catholic Church, do you think he takes away everything that he likes? The Mass, the priests, the fancy churches? No, he keeps them pretty much the same. In fact, if you'd probably looked at an Anglican church, which is also the Church of England, and a Roman Catholic Church, it might be a little tough to tell the difference. Okay? Well, there's going to be a group that does not like that. They want to break completely away from the Catholic Church. Completely. They are what's called separatists. Now, these separatists wanted to not only separate from the Catholic Church, but they wanted to separate from the Church of England because they said that the Church of England is too much like the Catholic Church, and they want to have their own religious freedom. Well, guess what? Basically, they're defying the king, aren't they? They're telling the king that we don't like your religion. Whoa. Remember, that's tough to do. So these separatists are going to be persecuted big time. All right? They're thrown in jail, often killed. Well, a group of separatists were able to get away. They actually left England, and in the early 1600s, they left for the Netherlands, Holland. All right? Now, the Dutch were welcoming. They allowed these people to come in. They allowed them to worship freely. But guess what? They begin to miss their English way of life, right? They don't want their kids walking around in wooden shoes. They don't like windmills. They're English, right? And they begin to miss that. They speak English. They don't speak Dutch. Their kids are coming home. They're probably saying some Dutch words. And they're like, we miss it. Where could we go? Where could we go where we could practice our religion freely? Well, we can't go to England. But hey, how about that Jamestown area? You know, maybe we could go over there. Maybe we could worship freely there. So they begin to get an idea to come to North America. Okay, so now the Pilgrims leave Holland. They go back to England, and they get a charter to go to Virginia. Remember, Virginia is really from like the Hudson River all the way down to, I think, the Carolinas, present-day Carolinas. Okay, so that's Virginia. So they board a ship. There's about 100 of them. Not all of them, though, are these separatists. Okay? They are about 102. I think that's what it is. Yeah, something like that. Between 100 and 112 people. They get on board a ship, and you all know it. It's the Mayflower. And they sail across the Atlantic Ocean. Remember, they're going to go to Virginia. Well, man, the sea is rough. They eat all their food. They run out of water. By the way, it's late. It's September when they leave. So do you think that they're going to have a lot of farming equipment with them? No. They're going to a colony that's already established, all right? You know, Jamestown's already got tobacco and plenty of stuff. So they don't take a lot of stuff with them because they're going to go to Virginia. Well, all right. So now it's late September, October, and they realize we're not going to make it. We're running out of food. We're running out of water. And we have to land. Now it's November, and they land in present-day Cape Cod, Massachusetts, way north of where they're supposed to be. And they realize that they're not going to be in Virginia. They're not going to be where their charter is. And it's going to be tough because, remember, they did not take a lot of stuff with them because they thought they were going to an established colony. All right? So let's leave our Pilgrims right there for a moment. Okay, now remember I told you that not everybody on board the Mayflower was a Pilgrim. They didn't, they were not separatists. Okay? Now, these, before they land, they have another great moment in American history when it comes to government. All right? They sign what's become known as the Mayflower Compact. All right? Now, again, just so you remember, the Plymouth colonists were known as Pilgrims. They didn't call themselves Pilgrims, probably. A pilgrim is anybody who makes a long journey for religious reasons. Remember in 7th grade, I'm sure you talked about Islam and how those people make a pilgrimage to Mecca. They go on a religious journey. All right. So anybody who goes on a long religious journey is on a pilgrimage, or also known as pilgrims. But I got to be honest with you. When somebody flashes the word or says the word pilgrim, what do I think of? These guys, right? That's how it is. All right. But really, a pilgrim is anybody who's on a long religious journey. All right. Now, let's get back to the Mayflower Compact. Now, these people, remember, they're up at Cape Cod, Massachusetts. They're out of their area where they're going to go, so there's not going to be any laws. They had settled outside the boundaries of their charter, so the terms or the rules of that charter would not apply to them. So what are they going to do? So before they went on shore, they wrote a framework for governing the colony called the Mayflower Compact. And guys, this is what's important. Everybody, all the males, by the way, because women weren't allowed to vote, all the males agreed to make and follow laws for the good of the colony. Okay? We are all going to make laws, and we're going to follow them for the good of the colony. In time, they're going to actually elect a governor and a council, kind of like the House of Burgesses back in Virginia. And again, it strengthens that English tradition of government through elected representatives. Okay, so there we go. We got the Pilgrims have landed up at Cape Cod. It's November 1620. Let's see how they fare. Hey, one thing I want to tell you guys real quick. Remember, the Pilgrims have left England because they're seeking religious freedom, right? They want to worship like they want to worship. However, that doesn't mean they're going to be tolerant to other people who disagree with them. So if you'd walked into Plymouth and you had been Catholic and say, "Oh, thank you for letting me stay here and with you guys, and I'm going to be Catholic," what? They would have probably tossed you out. So it's interesting that they are seeking religious freedom, yet they're not really that open to letting people practice their religion freely. They have banded together, basically kind of escaped everybody else and try to practice the way they want to practice. And you're going to see that many, many times that these religious groups that come to the United States to seek religious freedom aren't really that tolerant. In other words, they don't let other people practice their religion freely. All right, so back to the Pilgrims. Okay, so the Pilgrims have landed over at Cape Cod. They stay there about a month, and they decide to go a little bit further west. They kind of follow along looking for a place to land, and they come to a place where they like, and they call it Plymouth. All right? Plymouth Rock. Because that's where they left from, Plymouth, England. Again, not very creative on their name calling. Okay. Now, what's interesting, though, is when they get to Plymouth, they actually find a site that the Native Americans have abandoned because of disease. All right? They claim that they even found baskets full of corn and like some shelters and things like that. So what do you think the Pilgrims thought? They probably thought, "Oh my gosh, God has provided for us. Look at this. Just food laying right here. Oh my gosh. This is God's will." They're very religious people. I bet they believe that. So they get off the shore and they gobble up the corn, and they're very happy with it. However, remember, it's November. They can't plant crops. Too late. And of course, that's not going to be enough to get the Pilgrims through the entire winter. They had failed to bring a lot with them because, remember, they're planning on going to the Virginia territory. The winter is very harsh, difficult to survive, and because it's so late, they don't have time to even build proper shelters. They threw together some, crude homes, even dug holes in the ground and lived in holes in the ground covered with tarps and things. And out of those 100 people, almost half of them die. Almost half die between disease and starvation. The very first governor they elected dies, and then William Bradford, a guy you may have heard of, is chosen to take his place. Now, Bradford is going to be a very good governor. He's going to be a very good governor, very strong leader. He's going to be re-elected many, many times, and he would lead Plymouth for the next 36 years. That's pretty good, right? The Pilgrims begin to call this time the starving time. But guess what? They don't start saying, this is awful, and what are we doing here? Feeling sorry for them. They have very strong religious faith. They believe that God has sent them there. Unlike those people in Jamestown, they're hard workers. They have come to begin a life. So they work very, very hard, and that strong religious faith is going to help them. All right? They really look to God's help. But of course, they also need lots of help from the natives. All right? Well, in the spring, the Pilgrims begin to clear their land and plant crops. They also, again, receive help from some neighbors. Pemaquid tribe lives up there. There's a guy named Somerset, had learned English, believe it or not, from some explorers sailing along the coast. So once again, here's another sign. Oh my gosh, here's a native, and he speaks a little bit of English. All right? This guy introduces him to the Massasoit, who is the chief of the local Wampanoags tribe. But there's going to be another Native American Wampanoag, and his name is Squanto. Squanto, you guys have all heard of Squanto. Now, Squanto, this is so weird. It's almost like it can almost be true, but it was. Squanto had been captured by an English expedition led by John Smith. John Smith from Jamestown. All right? Squanto had lived for a time in England, so he becomes pretty good at speaking English. He can communicate with them, and he is then released, or either escaped or released, I don't remember which, and he goes back to the present-day Massachusetts, and guess who shows up? The Pilgrims, and they're Squanto. Squanto can speak English, all right? Squanto really taught the natives how to plant seeds, corn, beans, pumpkins. He's the one that kind of showed them how to take a seed, put a little minnow or a fish in there to add fertilizer, because that soil up there is very rocky, very tough to grow crops up in Massachusetts, New England. But he shows them how. He also teaches them how to catch eels out of the river. The Pilgrims even call Squanto a special instrument sent from God. All right? So Squanto is the guy who really helps save the Pilgrims. All right. That fall, as you guys all know, the Pilgrims had a very good harvest. They believed that God had given them this harvest. God had provided them corn initially. God had provided them Squanto. God had provided them everything. So they set a special day aside to give thanks. And that, turned into our present celebration of Thanksgiving. Interesting, though, there was no turkey on the first Thanksgiving. What? Nope. It was a lot of deer, waterfowl, things like that. A lot of seafood, oysters and fish and such like that, but no turkey. That's going to come later on in our traditions. All right. Well, there you have it. Remember, these people, they're the separatists. They want to separate from the Church of England. They're going to be persecuted. They look for a place to go. They go to the Netherlands. They don't like it there. They come to the New World. Remember, they're going to go to Virginia, but they can't make it that far. They land outside of Virginia, so they put together a government called the Mayflower Compact. They struggle that first winter. Half of them die. That spring, they're pretty much saved by the Wampanoag Indians, led by Squanto, and they give thanks to God, which is our first Thanksgiving. All right, there you have it.